Welcome to the Latest.com show. I'm Igor Darish. Joining me, he's a military vet, Latest.com senior political analyst from Pittsburgh, Josh Patton. And he's a 24-year veteran of the U.S. State Department, the author of We Meant Well, and the occasional Russian propaganda stooge sent to influence the U.S. election from New York, Peter Van Buren. Well, in a campaign marred by stupidity, this was maybe the stupidest week of all. On Friday, FBI Director James Comey sent a letter to Congress informing them that they found new emails on Anthony Weiner's laptop, possibly tied to the Clinton email server investigation, even though at the time he had no idea what was in the emails, no idea if they were duplicates, and didn't even have a warrant to review them at the moment. Many on the left were quick to accuse Comey of trying to influence the elections, even though just months ago they were praising him for not indicting Hillary Clinton. It's pretty clear what he's doing. He's not trying to influence the election. He's trying to cover his own ass with complete disregard for how this news will affect the election, which is interesting because several sources now tell CNBC, NBC News, and Huffington Post that Comey refused to release evidence of Russia trying to influence the election 3 weeks before he sent the letter to Congress. And surprisingly, even as Donald Trump and our own Peter were doing victory laps on Twitter about the email news, a lot of Republicans, even those that relentlessly attacked Clinton, were criticizing Comey and slammed him for messing with the election. And then, after the weekend, things got even stupider. Last night, there were multiple stories, one about the Trump Organization server that only communicates with a Putin-linked bank, and an even more out there story in Mother Jones that Russia has been cultivating Donald Trump as a Russian agent for 5 years, which quickly led to some more rumors that they have a sex tape of him in an orgy and they've been blackmailing him. Look, it's been a long fucking election. We're all tired. It's almost over. Can we all agree that Donald Trump is not a Russian secret agent, and if he were, he would be the worst at it? And there's no smoking gun on Anthony Weiner's sexting laptop, and Hillary's not going to be indicted for it. And Peter, can we agree that these are not smoking gun stories that are just being touted by people who desperately want to believe, even though the truth doesn't really back it up?
You know, the thing that saddens me most is the clear death of journalism. Basically, at this point in time, any mainstream journalist can write absolutely anything he or she wants, attribute it to an anonymous source, and it gets published, whether that's on the front pages of the New York Times or on a once respected place like Mother Jones that provided alternative journalism of very high quality. It is awful, absolutely awful. Forget which candidate you like or don't like. What's happening now in America is just disgraceful.
Josh, can we all agree?
Well, I'm a little less cynical than my dear friend Peter. It's spelled Pytor. I do think that I forget who said it on Twitter, but someone said something about now is the time when journalists drop investigative stories that they didn't quite finish yet before it's too late to actually print them. And I have to admit, just as a fan of good storytelling, I really enjoyed the whole Russian Trump sub-narrative thing. Now, in my mind, it was that he was co-opted by that guy that worked for Manafort, who Ken Vogel of Politico, reported that he was a Russian intelligence agent, and it would just make sense in this completely nonsensical election. However, that being said, we do need to take a breath and realize that no, Trump is almost certainly not a willing pawn of Vladimir Putin, and Hillary Clinton did not accidentally let Huma Abedin sync the GPS coordinates of all the bodies to her husband's porn laptop. But at the same time, as Peter pointed out, not so much that journalism is dead, but only less than a third of Americans trust it and trust sources and trust the news to do their job. It all might as well be true, because people are just going to believe what makes them feel better and gets them at least through the next week when we finally know how this national nightmare is going to end.
keep in mind that this level of journalism, until recently was reserved for Elvis sightings and the Roswell aliens, where you could quote someone, an anonymous source, saying whatever crazy shit. And I just keep going back. I go back to Mother Jones because they had such a reputation as an alternative news source, and they had always been you always could be proud of them for saying the hard truths, but they were well researched. To pull some guy out of the woodwork and accuse, you realize what that is doing. They're accusing Donald Trump of treason based on a single anonymous source. That's the level that this has all kind of fallen to. It's like those commercials. I've fallen and I can't get up. That's America.
It's not completely fair to group Slate and Mother Jones into the same category as, let's say, the New York Times or NBC News, is it, though?
Well, this is the way it's played, though. You let the New York Times isn't going to front page yet. They've still got a week. Isn't going to front page. Trump is a treasonous Manchurian candidate. But what happens now is they let someone else break the story. And then they say, well, Latest.com reports. The Slate story about
immediately after these.
I would be so happy if that happened.
They were the ones that immediately published the story of the FBI downplaying this Russian link completely. You published it this morning.
Yeah. No. I'm not talking about that. I'm going back to the idea that the New York Times had the server story. Intercept had the server story. Nobody ran it or commented on it until Slate came out this morning with it, and then all of a sudden the New York Times is free to pick it up. So, we give them and the larger media outlets a little bit of a pass, but they play the game too. They just let someone else kind of take the first shot so that they don't have to take responsibility for outing the story per se. Now, in this case, the New York Times did debunk it, which was something that needed to be done. But, of course, they did wait for someone else to break it so they could debunk it rather than say, look, we've looked at this thing since July and there's nothing to it. Anyway, the point is that Trump, if you're going to set up a secret server to communicate with Russia, you don't give it a DNS name with the word Trump in it, which is what apparently was going on.
Secret Russian server, do not look.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. In defense of our mostly internet cousins, Slate and Mother Jones, I will say this: that if this had been about Mitt Romney, if this had been a story about a server from, one of Mitt Romney, like tied to Mitt Romney, communicating with some foreign country, you can bet that every single journalist that emailed them or contacted them for comment would have gotten not just this is obviously ridiculous. They would have gotten some sort of detailed, credible statement that they could have run, and perhaps even some leads to check on their own to help debunk it. Part of the reason why Trump is so easily able to rag on the media is because he simply has refused to play by even the rules that the Clinton campaign plays by. And they're no bastion of transparency and champion of the Fourth Estate. But at the same time, you're not gonna say, I've looked at, the last 12 polls have had you behind, what's your reaction? The Clinton campaign will say that's not what those polls say. The Trump campaign and the candidate himself lies at such a level that, I would say that the media is failing and the press is failing has been in not trying to just run with stupid stories or get clicks or take down Trump. It's that they have no idea how to cover a guy like this, because for all the shitbags who sought the Oval Office, they've had at least some modicum of decency and willingness to work within the foundations of this whole thing we agreed upon and decided to call American democracy. Trump is flouting it, and that's why, you'll have one-sided stories, and because they don't give you any comment, they'll say one-sided story doesn't even include a comment from us. It's like a preemptive defense, and it works for the people who, for an audience that has grown to seek out and only trust news stories, regardless of facts, and more about how it makes them feel and confirms their own worldviews or beliefs or whatever. And I'm not even bagging on the audience for that either, because, I mean, again, in a year like this, who wouldn't look for some kind of comfort or peace of mind? It's just that's what Netflix is for, not,
Tequila.
the news.
Just to add to what
Tequila.
Josh, just to add real quick to what Josh said, Hope Hicks, who's the Trump national campaign spokeswoman, doesn't even reply to journalist inquiries until usually after the story has already been published.
Yeah, two quick side point. There was something in the New York Times article. The Trump organization did have some cybersecurity guy say something, but that's less relevant. Josh is absolutely correct. But let me be careful with this sentence. Trump knows that facts don't matter. And that it has been sort of the evil genius behind a lot of his campaign, including the fact that they don't comment on a lot of things, because they know that it's all about perception, and the facts are of very little relevance to that. And they're always playing perception, not, I guess reality would be the opposite. And so why comment? Either people have already made up their mind about it, or you're just going to say something completely different later anyway. So this is, I think, where the media has kind of fallen apart, but they've fallen too much apart, where they simply have started to play Trump's own game and say facts aren't really important. We're just going to report anything we want. We're going to spew out Clinton talking points. We're going to get caught doing it. Podesta's emails and the others are full of examples where reporters have talked to the Clinton people in advance about questions, CNN, Donna Brazile, and things like that. So I think the media has just given up.
Donna Brazile is a DNC hack who, for some reason, had a job at a news organization, just like Corey Lewandowski and a bunch of other political hacks. She's not a journalist.
Well, and she got caught doing something that no person associated with a media organization should do,
which is
whether
why
you're
she
Donna
no longer
or
works
anybody
for CNN.
else. Well, sure. After she got caught, yes, that's what happens, but that doesn't sort of negate things. I mean, if I commit an error or a crime or something and then lose my job over it, it doesn't erase what happened. The point here being is that facts become irrelevant in this campaign, and unfortunately, that illness, if you will, seems to have spread into the hands of an awful lot of journalists.
Well, I mean, all right, Peter and I got into it a bit on Twitter over the email news because Peter seems to think it's a much bigger story than I do. I mean, that's kind of a perception thing, no?
It depends. I mean, there's obviously a huge perception element of it, and I think the majority of Americans are going to react to it in that way. Certainly, the Clinton campaign is playing it. They've created a new, Hillary as a new victim of a new person now. The apparently 3-decade-old right-wing conspiracy extends into the FBI that exonerated her a couple of months ago. But it's never going to really be covered the way it should, which is, again, the question of what is the propriety of putting all of this kind of national security information, presumably, I mean, I'm guessing these aren't the emails about Chelsea's wedding, out in the open, of not exercising even rudimentary precautions. What does that tell you about these people?
Well, this is what we kind of were arguing about. You basically accused the New York Times and CNN of not covering or spinning the Clinton email news. And, I mean, even before this latest review, I've seen more than enough Clinton coverage for me to want to puke. And I'm just confused how it is that everyone knows about the email case and Hillary has the highest unfavorables of any Democratic nominee in history if, according to you, mainstream media doesn't even cover her.
No. I mean, I think, that you're exaggerating a little bit or misunderstanding. I mean, I wrote the first tweet as this information was just coming out, and I was on the bus. And I was reacting specifically to a tweet vomiting out of Paul Krugman, who's an economist / political hack who works for the New York Times, who was, immediately trying to think up as many excuses as he could. Obviously, very soon after that, everybody in the media went completely apeshit on the story. So, to the extent that you got the impression I thought the media wasn't covering it, No, that isn't what I was intending
Well,
to
your
do.
reply
And I have
to my
several.
tweet was that, well, let's see how Wolf Blitzer spins it.
Yeah, exactly. Because I wanted to see how Wolf Blitzer was going to spin it. What happened is the story blew up way past what I spitted on the bus when I wrote those tweets.
You guys should have looped me in on that, because I could have answered that question. Wolf Blitzer would have absolutely spun it by saying the most obvious and not needed to be said thing possible, something like, mentioning that Hillary Clinton was the Secretary of State and then talking about that for a while, because Wolf Blitzer is, is oatmeal in a person.
Twitter, I mean, you'll get a lot more of this kind of stuff. But, I mean, it was an initial reaction. Clearly, the media has figured out pretty quickly there's a hell of a story here.
But what is the
Paul
story?
Krugman
The story is not even about
the
Hillary.
story.
Which of the stories do you want? I mean, do you want is James Comey in the tank to destroy Hillary Clinton?
No, that's stupid.
Is James Comey, a Russian agent? At what level do the emails?
You're talking about political talking points. I'm talking about what's actually being reported. I mean, James Comey, at the time he sent the letter to Congress, blowing the whole fucking thing up, 11 days before Election Day, didn't know what was in the emails, didn't know how many there were, didn't know if there were any duplicates, which it appears that a lot of them will probably be, and didn't even have a warrant to review them.
I think the story. The story I think that is important is not so much James Comey, although it's more him, I think, than Clinton or even Huma Abedin. I think the story is instead the FBI. It's the FBI and how what is happening in there, talking about this investigation, which talking about any investigation is unprecedented. I did a story last week where I interviewed a guy who on Facebook said he wanted to shoot Hillary Clinton in the face, and then later said he wanted to shoot Trump too, so at least he's, not biased.
Fair and valid.
Right. And he then sent me a message. I did not. But he did send me a message when the feds came to interview him. And he gave me, he told me who came to them, and he talked, and he said, actually, I got a feeling that the agents were, on my side with this whole thing about not liking Trump and Clinton. So I called the Fort Wayne Bureau and wanted to just get a reaction to that. And they refused to say anything to me other than we don't comment on investigations. And that's the way it's always been. So right now, in Watergate, which is, I think, probably one of the most, this has been compared to foolishly by Trump and others, just in sort of the intensity of it. But during Watergate, there was one guy leaking stuff from the FBI, Mark Felt. Now we have, yes, he was Deep Throat. But now we have dozens of leakers, because you have people leaking to the Wall Street Journal about the internal fights at the FBI. You have people leaking to the New York Times. You have people leaking to the Washington Post. I mean, again, it might be one or two people authorized to leak this stuff because Comey, fucked things up so badly by dropping this vague-ass letter. But that, I think, is the real story here, is that the FBI, like the press that didn't know how to cover this, didn't know how to investigate this election. There are reports that they pursued an investigation about these Russian ties. What they found is inconclusive. And yet, I feel like people and Americans, are more likely to accept just out of hand that Trump isn't a Russian spy, as well they should, that Hillary Clinton isn't some kind of genius digital criminal classified mastermind who has worked the entire system like, a marionette puppeteer, when she can't even, figure out how to get the voicemail to work. And some of the other stuff her emails have shown is she's just a typical older lady when it comes to technology, not quite getting it. So I think those are the two stories that we're missing.
His email password was password.
Oh, God damn it.
We want to trust these people with secrets? I mean, this is like my mom. I think there's a couple of other stories attached to this. First, for some percentage of the voters, it's small, but some, and in a race this close, that may matter. There's a drip factor on these kinds of Hillary can't be trusted stories. There's a certain number of people who hit a threshold each time a new round of this stuff comes out. How many of them there are, we don't know. They're not going to vote for Trump, but they may stay home or they may vote for a third party candidate. So that's one story angle on this. Second story angle is that it has blown Trump's pussy grabbing off of the front pages. And that has helped Trump quite a bit. I think the other thing that people are reacting to, and how many and how, we don't know, but I mean, is the way the Clinton machine has reacted to this story, which reinforces every bad thing you can think about the Clintons. Yeah. Everything they touch turns to shit somehow. It just seems to happen. Reasons from vast right-wing conspiracy onward, I don't know. Second, she went on the attack, and it immediately became a personal attack against Comey. It quickly victimized her as the person who's getting attacked by the FBI in cahoots with Trump and the Russians. I mean, it quickly spun way, way out of control to the point where Harry Reid and Elijah Cummings, are claiming that the Hatch Act has been violated. And, Josh, you were in the military. I'm sure you got beaten around the head and shoulders about the Hatch Act as I did when I was in the government. I mean, 2 people in the Obama administration have already been sanctioned for violating the Hatch Act. Catherine Sabellas, or whatever, Health and Human Services, and then Julian Castro, and neither of them lost their jobs over it. This is just not a big deal. But most Americans don't know what it is. So the overreaction, Hillary Clinton's telling everyone every chance she gets that none of this matters, but it's all she's going to talk about for the last week. None of this has made her look stronger, better, more trustworthy, more presidential. The discussion has changed. Somebody got through to Trump and stopped him from putting his foot into his mouth at every possible opportunity for the last couple of days. So we'll see where it plays out. But, the polls I've seen are putting them within statistical tie areas. I mean, it gets more complicated than that.
Yeah,
but
I actually... Oh, go ahead, Peter.
Sorry. No, you go. I mean, Trump was down, 14 points a week ago, 10 days ago, something like that? Some crazy...
the one Washington Post poll had, a 12-point swing before the news even dropped. It was eight points after one poll dropped for Hillary.
Sure. And we all know about polls, and we all know these national averages don't matter, when you get down to electoral counts. I guess what I'm saying is that once again, the balance that the advantage that Hillary had seems to have diminished, and she's running out of time to catch up.
I looked at the about a year's worth of polls from Real Clear Politics average and the Huffington Post averages, and I've seen that they both have a sort of similar pattern in that. Pretty much since like right before the conventions, when the primaries were ending, Hillary Clinton has only trailed Donald Trump in the average one time, and that was like right after the Republican convention and this was right after I think the Comey press conference. So, well, it's not really a press conference, but you know what I mean. So it was like that 2 week, he got ahead of her in the averages. And then since then, she has maintained an anywhere from a 7 to 2 point lead over Trump. And it's ebbed and flowed as things goes. And she was in an expansion period, and now we're in a new contraction period. I would be stunned if this particular email story is what finally, breaks that pattern and puts Trump ahead. Now, again, that's just polling, and there's a lot of variance in polls this year. I mean, there are like you mentioned, there was the ABC poll that had her up by 12. There was another one that had her up by 12 a couple months ago. Some polls like the Los Angeles Times tracking poll has had Trump up by huge numbers. And, while that's good for averages, it shows that there's a lot of uncertainty. So, I do think that the feeling that anything could happen and everything matters is sort of legitimate, as opposed to, say, like in 2012, when it was, the polls were tight, but everything else was pointing towards an Obama win. This one, everything's pointing towards a Hillary win, but the polls are just, they can't decide if they want it to be a tight race or if she's going to run away with it. So I do think that I will say this too. My sort of worst case scenario for the week before the election was Trump on prompter and behaving himself, and Hillary Clinton having to deal with some email stuff in the news. I mean, I feel like that, because that email thing, it goes into everything, and it is sort of like a perfect entrance into the sort of cesspool of Clinton scandals, innuendo, and corruption. And if that's where people's heads are, and Trump is acting like he can, say complete sentences and tie his shoes, it's a tie race.
Right. And we keep reminding ourselves there is still 7 or 8 days here. And to think nothing new is going to drop in that period of time would be a very, very poor bet. There are opposition researchers. There are people going through files. There are sources being worked. There are WikiLeaks people. They must have every intern in Europe on this thing. So, what's going to come out, what's going to be said, we know that the advantage rests with Trump in terms of getting away with saying crazy, stupid, weird things. Hillary has to be a lot more careful about what she said, because people actually have come to take some of her words seriously. Trump gets a pass on the silly things that he often says, so he's got the advantage there. I think that Clinton is running out of time to kind of try different strategies. And that's what she and her people are doing, right? Trump's a Russian.
I mean, to be fair, Trump is the one running out of time since he's the one that's behind.
Well, yeah, but the curves, right? I mean, which way are the lines moving at this point in time?
Well,
Trump is gaining. Trump has picked up.
There's also been about 26 million people that's already voted.
Yeah,
that's true.
And more people are voting all the time. I mean, that's why we have to wait until November, 8th, hopefully for a decisive conclusion to all this. But you've got Hillary's lines are heading in the wrong direction at this point in time. What's currently in front of us is negative things in the media for her, neutral things for Trump. If that doesn't change, which is a foolish statement for me to make, the lines are pointing towards a very close race. That said, I am certain something will happen that will influence this, and I don't think it'll come down to November 8th, a very tight race. I just can't possibly tell you who's going to be ahead.
Well, I will say this too about the polling stuff and the uncertainty of it. And I forget where I saw this theory floated. I want to say it was on 538. I mean, probably. But either way, it's not so much that that people are changing their minds about the candidates, or that they are, still deciding, but rather what it is, it's a question of enthusiasm. When Trump was during the week of sexual assault allegation, Trump voters just weren't responding to the polls. So that's why, Hillary hit the scene with 12 points up in that ABC poll, not because she was that far ahead, but just because they couldn't, the level of enthusiasm of Trump supporters made them less likely to say that they would even go vote. So I do think that ultimately what this one will come down to is the get out the vote and the turnout effort. And there is a thing, Peter, you talked about how the media the coverage has been bad for Clinton. That's true. because in watching like Fox News, they'll, even when they're, reporting on the story, they do always make sure to say that we're only in this place because Clinton didn't do what she was supposed to do. But even people like Judge Napolitano, Jeanine Pirro, Kennedy have all come out and said this was fucked up for Comey to do, and this was unfair to Clinton. Yeah, Joe Walsh, who literally wanted to, go to war with Clinton's White House with his musket. He even said that. So,
yeah, he was much better when he was still with the Eagles. I don't know what happened to that guy.
Well, life's been good to him so far, Peter.
So far, the thing is that there is something of an element in what the Republicans are saying. Some of them, I'm not speaking to everyone, but there is a little CYA in there, and there's a little bit, I think, of an attempt to deflate Hillary, the victim. Because she does play that part so well. They're all after her. Comey's after her. If the Republicans came out, they have to moderate themselves. If it's too strong, Comey fucked her up, finally found his balls. That could easily play against them and let her slip into that victim role. They have to kind of back it off a tiny bit, so that they leave themselves some wiggle room in there, and they don't let her slip too deeply into explaining how the conspiracy has reached, another level against her. Let her keep screeching that none of this matters while talking about it all the time. She's acting far too much like Trump and not figuring out when it's time to shut up.
I think that just like the news itself, the perception of the email news is a little overblown. What Josh mentioned was from the ABC WAPO poll that they're trying to explain why there was an 8-point swing from one poll to the next, and they basically said it's not because anyone's changing their mind, they're less enthusiastic. There was another New York Times analysis of the early vote that found that young voters and black voter turnout is down, which Hillary desperately needs. This has nothing to do with email. Josh, how big a problem is that the baked-in perception that the Democratic coalition that twice elected Obama just not really into her?
Yeah, just not that into her. I don't know. I mean, because I can see conceivable arguments in either direction. The one being that people just end up not turning out, or they do turn out and vote Johnson or Stein or something like that.
And by the way,
but I can also see
the Hispanic turnout is up, and in Florida, for example, I think
voting in Arizona, as a matter of fact, which is where it needs to be up. Arizona. The tricky thing about the early vote thing is that's still relatively new. I mean, it's really hard to tell. Even in that same New York Times piece, they said that it's really hard to tell whether or not these data are significant in terms of who's going to win.
We're just comparing it to what it was in 2012.
Sure. But the thing is, there's so many laws that have changed, places that have voter ID. One of the things that I thought was really sort of compelling was that the areas with the biggest swing, or the biggest decrease in black voters, that was Ohio, Georgia, and North Carolina, have all had their problems with voter ID laws. However, the state in where the turnout increased the most was Wisconsin. That also has a fucked up ID law and has been sort of actively, violating federal court orders to correct the problem. So that's why I say that the early voting is hard to tell. Because and again, in a way, I see that the idea of Clinton being an underdog and that narrative, even the narrative that she's losing or could lose, will actually help her, because there are, this is the election where more people are voting against the other one than probably ever before. And if Clinton looks like, I did a couple weeks ago, I did a piece where if Clinton looks like she's going to win, people are going to not care and vote, either for third party or just not vote, sort of the way she lost Michigan. She was up so much in Michigan, people went in the open primary and voted against Donald Trump, feeling like patriots, and that gave the election to Sanders.
Well, if that's the theory, then could it be possible that this email news helps Hillary turn out voters?
Yeah, I think that could be. It will at least create urgency, if not enthusiasm.
Peter?
Yeah, enthusiasm is going to matter. I actually over the weekend had a chance to speak. I'm going to make myself look like an ass here by quoting an anonymous official.
Source?
A senior member of the Virginia Democratic establishment, who I've known for some time. And he was saying, Virginia is one of the most polarized voting blocks out there. We know practically street by street who's going to vote Republican and who's going to vote Democrat. Basically, it's Northern Virginia that'll go Democrat and Southern Virginia that will go Republican. But the concern here he expressed was that Trump's voters seem to be highly motivated this year. And so the Trump turnout in Virginia is something that people are starting to count on. The Northern Virginia people are noticeably kind of flighty. I got to go to work that day. There's a sprinkling of angry Bernie people still there. There's real concern over that. He also, for what it's worth, mentioned concerns about voter intimidation. Virginia is an open carry state, and there are rumors of all sorts of naughtiness that may come down with people standing around with guns. Who knows where that's going to go? But in the end of the day, this turnout is going to matter so much. So if it's true that this email mess is going to somehow increase Hillary's turnout, then that's magic for her. That's going to be very significant. I'm not sure I agree with that. She has failed miserably in the last couple of weeks, or even longer, to sort of have a reason to vote for Hillary other than she is not Donald Trump.
It's a good fucking
really
reason, though.
Struggled.
It is a good reason.
A good reason.
I'm actually going to push back on that a little bit, Peter, because I do feel like, and this is part of the reason I think why Trump may have gained or her support may have dipped, because that all last week she was campaigning not for herself but for the senators and the down ballot people, and she was trying to present, at least in her rally speeches, not what her surrogates were saying in the ads and stuff.
Yeah.
But they did, she was trying to create this sort of democratic vision and try to get a mandate because she seemed so, poised for a big win. In a way, it's kind of funny. She was starting to play in places like Arizona and Texas, where obviously, Arizona apparently maybe, especially with the Hispanic vote up, but Texas, no way they're winning Texas at the presidential level. But Hillary Clinton comes to town, that gives neutral or even positive looking news coverage for the local races, and they might have a fighting shot to win their district or the state for the Senate.
We'll keep it.
So I do think that she was being sort of a loyal soldier, and perhaps almost not, instead of shoring up the states that she needs for 270, and then kind of this fell on the email thing and the poll tightening thing was like a 1-2 punch that put the Clinton campaign that was throwing their garbage bags over the fence of the White House to get ready to move in, and it scared them and rightly shocked them. Again, if you're looking at the polling averages, we won't know how the email thing will play out until the election's almost upon us in the polls. But it's sticking consistently to that pattern, but we are on that sort of downslope now. And if Trump can pull ahead, and for the first time since July 28th, that would I think really change the race. Otherwise, I think we are still talking about how much she wins by.
We'll see. We'll see. I mean, if you look, talking about this negative thing where she's not really made a good argument why to vote for her other than if she's not Trump. Again, a powerful argument, but I mean, we've kind of bounced from there's the week where Trump made fun of the Gold Star family. Then comes the week where 3 pages of his leaked tax returns are the big story we're all going to talk about. Then we went through, you referred to it earlier, the week of sexual harassment allegations. I'm not seeing that strong drive to say, here's what I'm going to do as president. Here's precisely what my plan is. We get some stuff about immigration, something immigration. She wants to put a preferred justice on the Supreme Court. That's a very powerful argument, but it tends to be sort of, okay, great. She said that, and you're either going for it or you're not. She's been very unpersuasive on foreign policy. I think she's scared some of a traditional Democratic base with how belligerent she's been towards Russia and plans in the Middle East. I don't know how many people care, but I think the people that do care are really starting to wonder what the hell is going on anymore in the Middle East and what we're still fighting about. We'll have to see. The October surprises, however, are clearly bleeding over into November. We still have the fun possibilities ahead of some kind of terror attack. Who knows? There's so much time.
I feel like the issue portion of this campaign is long gone. Josh, you keep turning your camera off. Peter mentioned
I'm not doing it on purpose, guys.
The chance of voter intimidation. And, Peter, do you envision that some of Trump's deplorables, whether it's the angry gun owners or the large swath of white supremacists that have really gotten behind this campaign are going to come out and try to intimidate voters? Because, look, there's already been a lot of voting going on in a lot of states. There hasn't been any reports of this.
I suspect there's going to be some of it. I mean, the people who support him rabidly are, in fact, pretty crazy folks. We've seen a lot of this behavior at the rallies where they chant stuff and they sort of get into this sort of mob psychology. I think when you mix that in with open carry, when you mix that in with the racism that's kind of baked into parts of this race, voter intimidation is very much a real thing. Keep in mind that the voting that's going on now is kind of scattered and a little here, a little there. It's not very public. But Election Day, every camera that the media owns is out on the street, and every tiny thing that happens will be certainly blown into epic proportions. I think it's going to fire up a lot of people whose intentions are not particularly good. And so I am concerned about voter intimidation. And I think, see if you guys agree, but I think any voters that aren't intimidated are going to be, I don't see the Hillary supporters doing much to discourage the Trump voters. I see it going the other way.
Josh, what do you think the likelihood of it happening on a large scale is? And if it does happen, what does it even look like?
Well, I think it's going to happen. I think it's happening because, a couple months ago when that poll watchers story broke, I signed up for it just to see what the email was that they sent back that contained the troubling language people were talking about. Well, just last week, I got a call from someone in the Trump campaign inviting me to come to training. Now, she obviously hasn't looked up who I am yet or in any way checked that against their lists. And if they somehow let me go to this training, I'm going to go and tell you guys all about it. But they're actively trying to recruit people. They are trying to train them, but there was a Wall Street Journal report last week about training in Virginia where people were just spouting conspiracy theories and talking about how, you go to those places, wink, wink, meaning places where majority black people vote, and look for fraud. And, in PA here, the Republican Party is actually filed an injunction in federal court to change a state law that's been a state law since 1982 that you can't go and be a poll watcher in a county where you don't live. And so specifically what that means is if you live outside of, Allegheny County where Pittsburgh is, which is a very rural area, or the counties outside of Philadelphia, also rural areas, you can't go in and observe those troubling polling places with that law in place. So I think that since the Republicans went as far to file a fucking injunction, that they definitely, at least in Pennsylvania, have plans to do this poll watching thing. And I mean, I don't see how they could do that, and how these people could do that and not intimidate voters. It doesn't make sense to me.
There's also the DNC lawsuit against Trump, the GOP, and longtime Trump buddy Roger Stone in 4 states, accusing them of voter suppression. What exactly are they accusing them of doing, Josh?
It's because they have these like official looking IDs, and essentially they're encouraging people to go up to them and ask them about who they voted, and to be aggressive, and to seem like they would be official poll watchers, doing an exit poll, or doing some kind of checks and balance thing. But really what they're doing is electioneering. And that, I think, is, electioneering at best, voter intimidation at worst. And so I think that's what the DNC lawsuit was about. Ironically, the federal judge who, I don't know if it's ironic, but federal judge who's doing the case in PA about changing the old law, and he doesn't seem to be, reading his statements in court, it doesn't seem to be like that he's into changing that law. He wanted to know, why didn't we want to change it in 2004? Why didn't you want to change it in 2012? He also seemed to not really be taking the DNC lawsuit seriously. So this might be more silly season bullshit. This might be them just filing lawsuits to fuck with each other, and it's hard to tell at this point what is legitimate and what isn't. However, I know that Trump supporters, especially people who fervently believe that he's somehow going to win, but somehow the system's completely rigged, they're going to go out there and, perhaps not even meaning to do anything illegal or bad, are going to go out there and do some stuff that's illegal and bad.
Agreed.
The other thing to keep in mind is the RNC is under a consent order that they agreed to, I think, like 40 years ago or 30 years ago, and there was a case of mass voter intimidation in New Jersey when Governor Tom Keene won the race in an off-year election. And I believe that consent order is almost coming to an end after, I want to say, this year, and they risk being under more scrutiny if they don't. Josh, next time we're going to talk, the votes will be counted. Hopefully the election will be over. Who do you think wins and by how much?
I still think Hillary Clinton is going to win. I do. I think that, and again, barring, unless Trump starts pulling ahead in the average, or if he starts pulling ahead in key states like North Carolina.
Can I just interrupt because I didn't set that question up right? Sure. I mean, the national polls at this point are bullshit. Like, they're worthless in general, and you have to look at the state polls. Even if he wins Florida, even if he wins Ohio, even if he wins North Carolina, New Hampshire, I mean, Nevada's probably out of reach at this point, but he still doesn't get to 270. He'd need to flip states that seem impossible for him to flip, like New Hampshire, Colorado, Pennsylvania, Virginia.
Exactly, and I think as long as Hillary Clinton is able to hold on to Pennsylvania and get one of the big three of Ohio, Florida, North Carolina, if she does that, I think we'll be fine, and I think that she would probably end up winning by a bigger margin than we thought. I feel like we're either going to see something like 2008, or we're going to see something where Hillary Clinton does just sort of eke by with maybe 10 or 20 electoral votes. Unless Trump is able to, rescue a Syrian refugee baby in the Rio Grande as it's trying to illegally enter the. Yeah, that's the thing. Of course, doesn't need his base. The Republic, that's sort of been the argument. His base isn't going to win the election for anybody, and that is why I still feel confident that, there's going to be some white people who go in and vote Trump because either it feels good to say fuck you, or, they really are afraid of, the brown folks coming in and taking over. Or maybe they even are like, he's great on the economy. Maybe they actually believe that shit. I don't know. But I don't think that there is going to be enough of a Hillary Clinton suppression to not deliver the election for her. I do believe, I believe the reporting that says the Clinton campaign and the Democrats have a sort of unprecedented level of understanding of the electorate and the data that they've used, and that they know where to target their get out the vote campaigns. Trump is just relying on the RNC, who is more likely to help him now than they were a week ago. And I think that's sort of what we're seeing.
In a place like Pennsylvania right now, the RNC is focused on bringing out voters that support Clinton but might vote Pat Toomey.
Exactly. It seems like, I definitely think that because remember, it's politics. If people think Trump has a chance of winning, they will come home and do the right thing. If anything, Toomey will help Trump in that state or in PA, but I don't see it. I don't even see the RNC's efforts being enough to put Trump over the edge.
And again, keep in mind, half of Florida has already voted. There's been about 30 million votes cast. Peter, who wins by how much?
Prediction? The idea would be that I have to put a big asterisk, barring any significant event, and of course nobody predicted what happened last Friday with Comey. I think Hillary is going to win, but I have great fear that it's going to be sort of a nightmare victory. In other words, that the popular vote will be very, very close, if not possibly even in Trump's favor. She'll win on the electoral count, but where that takes us is what bothers me a lot. This election, given what's happened and the way that this election has been so divisive and so emotional, this isn't going to end on when the votes are counted. Even assuming, and please God, let this be true, that there is a clear decision made on November 8th. This isn't going to end. If Clinton goes to the White House with a solid majority in Congress, that might be for America the best possible outcome. But if she goes and doesn't have that solid majority, then the country is just going to be frozen there. If Trump wins, all bets are off at that point, no matter who's in Congress, because I don't think any of us really have a sense of what he will do as president. I'm not quite sure that he does either. We have a pretty good guess what Hillary might do, for better or worse. Anyway, my prediction is Hillary, decent margin on the Electoral College, very tight on the popular vote, but it's a soft lead she has right now, and that's very important to keep in mind. It's not going to take a lot to push her into a hole that she may not be able to get out in time.
There's a large amount of third-party support in the polls, maybe unprecedented since 1996 when Ross Perot was still a thing. Come election day,
like
Josh,
a month ago.
How much? Yeah, exactly. Well, it's fallen from double digits for Johnson, 4 or 5 points for Stein, to about 5-6 points for them combined. How much do they actually end up getting in the votes?
You know what? I don't know. I do think that, because again, if the theory is correct that people go Johnson-Stein out of just pure disgust for both two candidates, that could be a powerful thing. That might be something that would be hard to sort of poll for, hard to test, hard to anticipate. My feeling is, and this might just be my unbridled optimism, is that they're going to be negligible. I think Gary Johnson might be able to get that 5% popular vote threshold you need to get public financing, which I think was his only goal this entire year. Especially, I think that's definitely Bill Weld's only goal, was to just sort of build up the Libertarian Party and get them the public matching funds.
Bill Weld is
but I don't think.
Man.
I mean, no shit. The only caveat is Evan McMullen, and that is going to be really interesting because, you know, especially with the white nationalist robocall. Did you guys hear about that thing?
Yeah,
there was the white nationalist that said he was
pro-Trump PAG. Basically, started it yesterday, I believe. Started calling Utah voters,
Yeah.
saying that Evan has two mommies. He's over 40 years old and doesn't have a girlfriend, so he's probably a closet homosexual.
Yeah, I am 100% certain that's going to backfire, especially because while he's sort of unknown to us, from what I understand, in the sort of Mormon community such as it is, he's not unknown. And that, I think, could get – if Trump loses Utah, that'll be just something that's sort of fun for us to talk about. I don't think it'll – you know, there is that one crazy scenario where it could make it 269 or, you know, make none of them would get enough electoral votes. But I don't think that's going to happen. But that's the only state. That's the only state where I think third parties will come into play is Utah.
It's interesting. I still have an old phone number that lists me as resident in Northern Virginia, and so I got a call from the Clinton campaign the other day, and I mentioned that I was probably leaning third party. And boy, did they have prepared talking points about, you know, did I really want to, it was a nice version of, did I really want to be responsible for President Trump? And, you know, could I live with myself for making that decision? It's that important. It was very well phrased and all. It wasn't quite that crude, but they seemed to be worried about that. And I suspect it has something to do with where they thought I was geographically located, which is Northern Virginia, where they're going to need every vote that they can get to counteract the fact that the other, whatever percentage of landmass Virginia is going to vote Trump. So I think they're worried. Think about it. I mean, if you take Gary and Stein together, I mean, whatever, 5, 6, 7%, whatever it is today. I mean, imagine if Clinton magically got another 7%. I mean, you know, she'd blow this thing away. So yeah. I think the Clinton people worry about these things. It probably varies from state to state, but in Virginia, for example, it bothers them a lot more than, say, you know, California and New York, where they could care less what happens to the third parties.
It's funny because I got a survey, and it wasn't a phone call, but it was an email survey from the RNC today, and what they wanted to know was if I was voting for Donald Trump. And if I was voting for every Republican on the ballot, which is a stupid question because if I'm not voting for Donald Trump, I'm not voting for every Republican. That was my comment, by the way. I was like, the way you wrote second question is, even if I was going to vote all Republican down ballot, I would have to still answer that no. But then the other question they asked was, do you think Trump should announce his cabinet before Election Day? I mean, what kind of strategy? I don't even know if that's legal. I kind of feel like there's a law that says you're not allowed to say who you'd appoint to cabinet positions before the election. But what? So I think that, and here's what I think that Peter's example and my example shows in my scientific analysis of these two random fucking things, is that the Democrats, I feel like they're not just trying to win, they're trying to win big. And I think that's what they're going for. They're going for a huge win. So if they're targeting third-party folks like that and have stuff ready for them, maybe they're worried, and perhaps they should be, or maybe they were worried, but now they're like, we want to get them back anyway because we want to win with a mandate. Whereas the Republicans are like, seriously, just tell us what do you want to see so you'll fucking vote for Trump? It feels like the Republicans are still more desperate. And there's been that theory that because of the partisan divide and the way things have shaped up post-2000, that it's just not possible for there to be, that a 6% spread in the popular vote is a landslide in America today. So I don't know. We'll see. I would say this. The thing that would surprise me the most is if Hillary Clinton did actually just won one of those red states where she was viable. You know what I mean? Whether it's Arizona or Georgia or something like that.
Right now.
Right. I mean, and it would be very interesting if Clinton did get the mandate, because then that might change Peter's unfortunately accurate but dismal prediction of what a first year of a Clinton presidency would look like, which is all just partisan arguments and fighting, and especially if it's close, because Republicans will think that the Trump strategy is the winning strategy. They just need to get a guy who isn't going to, fucking blast hate sex tape tweets out at 3 a.m. If we had fucking Nigel Farage running for president, this would be a very much closer race.
Yeah, if Clinton's going to win, then I think as objectively as it's possible to say, let's hope that she wins big, and that may be the best hope we have for the country to kind of move in some direction. I won't even say move ahead. My fear is just some kind of logjam in Washington where nothing, again, happens for years and years at a time.
That seems like it'll happen anyway. But, what Josh said, Gary Johnson and Joe Stein have a negligible amount of votes. Ralph Nader had about
Don't sleep on Jim Gilmore. Gilmentum!
Ralph Nader had about 2% in the Florida vote and changed the course of the entire world. So hopefully we don't wake up with the Ralph Nader situation. It's almost over, you guys. I'll see you on the other side. Thanks for tuning in.
We did it.
FreedomMandas.com.